Thank you for staying with us on this beautiful Tuesday, the 1st of December, 2015. Whatever you're doing today, we hope that all is going well and you'll continue to have a productive day. If you're getting ready to go on out to work this afternoon, we do hope you'll have a good one. Let me say a very special good afternoon to Mr. Shante Cudgington. Is that the way you pronounce your name?
Absolutely.
But it's spelled with a C, right?
Yes, it is.
Your headphone is a bit loud?
Well, yeah, he's getting...
Okay, well, fix him up. Take him down and carry me up. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah, good. No, that's too much now. Thank you kindly.
Okay.
He's the ace engineer for Observatory.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Now I can't hear myself.
You can't hear yourself?
Okay, no, perfect.
Okay, good. So, Mr. Codrington, the last time we were here...
Right.
And I've had... where I met lots of folks.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that your idea is great.
That's good to hear.
You know, and but we're still waiting to hear.
Right, right.
But again, for folks who may not know, and did you get a chance to give the government the proposal that we spoke about? Have you had a chance to sit down with the government?
No, not as yet. That's what I'm working on. But before I begin, I just want to say, Dave, thank you for having me on your show. It's not an opportunity that I take for granted or lightly, so I'm forever grateful for the opportunity to be back on your show. Secondly, I want to say a wonderful good afternoon to the people of Antigua and Barbuda. It's always a pleasure to be speaking to you directly on such a large forum. And then thirdly, I want to say a very, very, very special good afternoon to all the December borns out there and the Sagittarius.
That mean you're December born? When is your birthday?
December 21st.
You're far away. You're 20 days away, right?
I'll be 27 years old, so I'm grateful. I'm in a very blessed and blissful space in my life, and so I just have to, give the Most High thanks for blessing me. He saved the best for last. You know what he was doing.
Okay. Well, so you're the last of your father's child?
Well, no, in terms of the months and the Sagittarius and the Capricorns and so
Everybody
forth.
claim their month is the best month.
No, we have evidence.
I'm glad that I'm just born.
There you go. There you go.
Now, we're looking at the situation in Paris with the summit,
right.
The climate change, and there's so much, and you look at what's happening in China with all the smog, and folks, they're going through some torrid times, and you wonder, will this ever change? And here in Antigua and Barbuda, as I focus on that, we walk around freely,
right.
we don't have those things, but they're not visible to us, but somewhere along the line, some of these things are affecting us in Antigua and Barbuda.
Right. And what I want us to do today, Dave, is not talk about renewable energy just yet, because what I would like for us to talk about is economics, simple economics 101. And we're going to see that no matter how we twist and turn, all roads lead back to renewable energy. Right. So to begin, it's stated that 60% of Antigua's GDP comes from tourism. This number was back in the 1990s, so it doesn't include the free movement of people within the OECS, which was made into law in January of 2011. It doesn't include the natural increase in birth rate among Antiguans. It doesn't include inflation. Now, I got a chance to check out some information from Antigua Hotel and Tourist Association, and in 2007 the hotel occupancy rate, right, well let me back up and say the 60%, which doesn't include inflation, the free movement of people, and the natural increase in birth rate among Antiguans, I believe that 60% is actually low. It's more like 42%, although I must admit and acknowledge that that's just my conclusion.
But your conclusion, based on what they're saying, I think the tourism 70%
in terms of
GDP.
I was once told there are liars, there are damn liars, and then there are statisticians. So people, you can fudge the numbers, but given
But what I want to do, I'm going to go with 27-year-old Codrington and what you have summarized it to be.
Well, what I was going to say is from the Antigua Hotel and Tourist Association, the occupancy rate in 2007 was 66%, right? What that means is for every 100 rooms, there are 66 rooms that were occupied by tourists and guests, and the remaining 34, if my maths is correct, rooms that are not occupied, that are absolutely vacant. In 2012, the occupancy rate was 58%. In 2015, year to date, is 56%. So as you can see, throughout the years, from 2007 to 2015, the occupancy rate
is
has
dipping.
slowly been declining, right? From 2007 to 2015, those 9 years, only 3 out of those 9 years had an increase in the occupancy rate, right? So again, it goes to show you that the tourists are not coming as much as before, and the ones that do aren't spending as much. I remember Observer a couple years ago published as their headlines, the tourists are not spending. Now, this isn't to say that the taxi men and the vendors on the streets don't know how to sell, or they're not working hard enough. I watch some of them, and they're the hardest working people in Antigua and Barbuda. It's just simply a matter of the tourism industry is not enough to sustain Antigua's economy. That's the reality. That's the hard facts. And because it isn't, that is why the government goes to countries like Venezuela and China. They go to the IMF, they go to the CDB, and any other foreign financial institutions to borrow money to sustain their economy. So they're not necessarily just borrowing money for the sake of borrowing money. It's because our main industry, which is tourism, it's not enough to sustain Antigua and Barbuda's economy. Now, the sad thing is, as a form of repayment, because when we borrow these money from these financial institutions, they're not simply, we have to pay them back. They're not grants, they're loans. And so after a particular date, they are expected to, the government of Antigua and Barbuda is expected to pay that money back. And if they're not, these institutions are not going to say, well, times are hard, so we're going to give you another 6 years to pay it off. No, they're coming asking for their pound of flesh. And so as a result, the government has to swap vast amounts of land. I hope you like that I use the word swap and not give away.
Yeah, swap is better than give away. Right. Last time you were telling me about giveaway. I don't think they give away.
Right. And I agree with you. So I would have to say swap. So as a form of repayment or payment, the government of Antigua and Barbuda has to swap vast amounts of land. They have to sell our passports via the CIP program, and they have to sell shares in our power plant. We no longer have 100% ownership as Antiguans and Barbudans in the W.I.R.E power plant. And so, again, the cold hard facts is the status quo is outdated, and the solution, or part of the solution, would be for the government to endorse, to prop up another industry that will overhaul the tourism industry altogether. Now, we have several templates to follow in the form of the BRIC nations. Now, the BRIC nations are Brazil, Russia, India, and China. They simply took the first letters of each of these names, of each of these countries,
and called BRIC.
BRIC nations, right. And so the BRIC nations, Brazil in the 1990s, they were once deemed as a developing country such as Antigua, right? And the leader of Brazil at the time made the hard choice of restructuring Brazil's economy, from transitioning from an agricultural society to exporting manufactured goods such as steel, cement, televisions, and vehicles. This was back in the 1990s. Russia also was considered an agricultural society and as well as a communist state. And the leader of the country in the 1990s as well transitioned to exporting energy as well as becoming a more capitalist state. India, in the 1990s as well, transitioned from being an agricultural society to exporting manufactured goods such as textiles, telecommunications, and biotechnology. And then finally, China, which was also a communist state and an agricultural society, they transitioned to exporting manufactured goods such as clothing, textiles, computers, cars, and pharmaceuticals in the late 1970s. And so the solution, Dave, would be for Antigua's economy transitioning from exporting tourism and producing and exporting manufactured goods. Because the truth of the matter is, Dave, tourists are going to come to Antigua. Antigua is one of the best islands, if you ask me. I might be a bit biased, but Antigua is one of the best islands in the Caribbean, and I would dare say the world. We have 365 beaches for every day of the year. I believe we have some of the best beaches in the world, especially when you include Barbuda with their beautiful pink sandy beaches. So tourists are going to come regardless. So it's just a matter now of finding another industry that would help to
bridge the gap between what we're losing in tourism and what we ought to need to the government to sustain the economy and not be able to borrow so much money.
Precisely. Mm-hmm. And so a question I would pose to you, and it's not a big question or a trick question. Given everything that I've just said, what would you propose Antigua economy should switch to? Bearing in mind that there are no wrong answers as long as you have, a valid, justifiable reason for.
But when you look at, let's start with the last one, China,
mm-hmm.
and where they switch from the agricultural belt.
Right.
They didn't just switch from the agricultural belt. The education system was in place to teach the children the kind of technology that they were exporting.
Right.
So it's not something that was happening overnight.
Exactly.
The same thing with India, because if you look at the global market now with India and China, you would understand the growth they've done. But the school system was in place to teach their children the science, the technology, and all that. They didn't just switch and get up. The education was put in place.
Right.
For Brazil, I guess would be the same thing. But if you ask me a question, what would be
transition to in terms of our main source of the GDP?
What would our education? Well, the only thing I could say is that manufacturing.
You hit the nail on. Can you see my notes from here?
No. No, but common sense will tell you, because when we look at what's coming out of the schools and when we look at the kind of science and technology that China students would have adopted, and India, the things that they would have done over the past and are still doing in the world today, I don't think we're doing that as far as the education system in Antigua is concerned. So manufacturing would be, I think, one of the easiest things for us to do in Antigua.
Precisely. And you're absolutely correct in terms of the education, because that would need to set precedents first before we can actually transition. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I absolutely agree with you on that. I think that would have to be the responsibility of the government moving forward. Now, with manufacturing, you're absolutely right. I looking on the numbers and what I've seen thus far, manufacturing would be the ideal for Antigua and Barbuda. However, Antigua's economy is in a conundrum, if you will. If I will. And here's what I mean. The more developed Antigua becomes, the higher the cost of energy becomes. And that is because there is limited supply of energy. So when supply is low and demand is high, the cost of the commodity increases. And there is limited supply, more or less, because there's only one independent power provider, which is APC. Now, I was living in Houston, Texas for 8 to 9 years, and just within Houston city limits alone, just within the city, I'm not talking about the state of Texas, there were about 6 different energy companies in Antigua.
Well, I've been
in Houston.
I've been in Houston for over six times, so
Nice.
I'm quite aware of the terrain in Houston.
Right, right. So it wasn't a shortage. Now, if you were to include the other cities like Dallas and San Antonio and Austin and up where the Midwestern State University is, where Antiguans receive scholarships to study abroad, and the whole state of Texas, I wouldn't be exaggerating when I say the number of independent power providers is in the hundreds, right? And so that would be the solution moving forward, to have at least two independent power providers. And this is where W.I.R.E comes in. Right? W.I.R.E has one simple goal, which is to reduce Antigua and Barbuda's dependence on fossil fuel by 50% in 10 years. And we will accomplish this goal by installing an offshore wind farm.
We're going to take a break. We'll come back for more. Thank you for staying with us on this Tuesday afternoon, the 1st of December 2015. Season's greetings to one and all. Mr. Shante Codrington, representative for the Wadadley Industrial Renewable Energy Limited. And Shante, we were at the point where you were breaking down the numbers of why we look at Houston and realize that there's so many private renewable plants, and we're at the stage where Antigua and Barbuda, you're seeing it fit that Antigua and Barbuda needs to adopt, and not just because it's Wadadley Industrial Renewable Energy Limited. You look at climate change and you look at the cost of doing business.
Right.
Because if we have independent power plants in Antigua and Barbuda, renewable energy, sooner or later it's going to cut the cost of electricity across the island. Exactly.
And I'm going to touch on that point in just a minute here, because you're right on the ball. Now, like I said, W.I.R.E intends to install an offshore wind farm, 20 megawatts. On paper it's 21, but we just say 20 because it's a rounded number. Now, one may ask, why an offshore wind farm? For 3 simple reasons. One, it's out of sight and out of mind, so you don't have to worry about looking out your window or driving to work or from work and seeing this large wind turbine. It can sometimes be a sore sight for the eyes. Secondly, lands are scarce in Antigua. Antigua is only 108 square miles, and so there's not enough. We, the people, and the government have to begin thinking in terms of efficiency, right? We can't. We have to make use of what we have. Lands are scarce. And then finally, wind is the most affordable and efficient renewable energy source. Now, according to a study that was sponsored by the Organization of American States and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, Antigua, out of all the Caribbean islands, have the potential to produce the most amount of wind energy, in excess of 400 megawatts, right? Now, to give you an idea of what that 400 megawatt means, Antigua's peak consumption as a nation is 51 megawatts. 51. So that's about 8 times more than what we actually produce here in Antigua and Barbuda in terms of wind energy. And so if the government is just so, what's the word? If just visible, for lack of a better word, to materialize just 5% of that 400 megawatts, Antigua and Barbuda will be in a much, much better state than what it is right now.
Now, the 5% megawatt is what we get from the renewable energy, 20 megawatts. 20 megawatts?
Right, which is what?
And that would give Antigua and Barbuda 5%?
No. The 5, if the government would be, in terms of having the foresight to materialize just 5% of the 400, which is around 20 megawatts, then Antigua and Barbuda would be in a much better state.
Because the 400 is what they're saying Antigua is capable.
Correct. And so now, what that does, and let me add further. Let's say, like I said, 51 megawatts is our peak consumption as a nation. Let's say in 5 years, our peak demand would increase to 57.
Because of industrial manufacturing.
Just the population increase, inflation, and so forth. Well, not necessarily inflation, but our consumption increase as a nation. So that's a difference from 51 to 57. There's a difference of 6 megawatts. The goal would not simply be to prepare for that 6 megawatts. The goal would be to supply the country with way more than it needs. The 20 megawatts would supply a little more than 50% of what the country needs as a whole. And what that does, when you amp up this country on energy, it's almost like you're feeding it steroids, right? You amp up this country on energy. There's more supply. When there's more supply than the demand,
it becomes cheaper.
Exactly. The cost of electricity becomes cheaper. It goes down. And when it does go down, then you can bring in the
potential for business.
Exactly. You can have companies like Apple coming here to set up factories for Antiguans and Barbudans to be making the new iPhone 9s and the iPhones 8.
Because as it stands right now, they're saying the cost of doing business in Antigua is prohibited because of the energy cost.
Exactly. That is what it all hinges on. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning of the conversation. No matter how you twist and turn it, you're still going to go back to the conversation is still going to lead to energy, right? And so it's important when we bring down that cost of energy, companies like General Motors would be willing to set up factories here for Antiguans and Barbudans to be making the latest SUVs and the Hummers and so forth to export to the world, And so again, but when you talk about now job creations, it goes beyond the job creation. It might be a situation where there's too many jobs and not enough people to fill the gap.
But that would be a good thing. You could always import workers from across the region.
Exactly.
We have free movement of people.
Precisely. And so that's exactly what we're aiming at. But as of right now, there's limited demand. There's limited supply, a high demand, high cost of energy, and there's lack of jobs.
It's prohibited as far as the economy is concerned and getting investors to come in with the manufacturing plants. Right.
It's unattractive to businesses overseas and even here in Antigua and Barbuda.
But Shanti, we don't normally have interjection from the general public, but we have this one.
Okay.
Would it be a good idea to get solar panels set up on the hills of Antigua to help with the power problems?
It would.
What's the difference of folks setting up solar panels and, of course, wind power?
The solar panels produces energy from the sun, sunlight. It converts the sunlight into energy. DC goes into an inverter, and because the way how it's society set up, we use ACs in our homes. Now you don't have to wonder what that means, but our energy comes in the form of AC. The solar panels produces DC, and so you need a DC.
You have the thing to switch.
Right. And so that is what happens. The sun produces energy because of the solar panels and converts it from DC. The inverter converts it from DC to AC. Now the wind turbine use the wind, the natural flow of the wind to produce energy, and the same process applies. It produces DC, you have the inverter to convert it to AC. And so in terms of the winds on the hill, it's a good idea.
The panels.
Right, the solar panels. It's a good idea. My main priority and concern has always been, again, efficiency. How many lands are you taking up? Because you have to look at the population increases. People are wanting to buy homes, wanting to buy land, and so forth. So you want to make sure that every square foot of land is used to the optimal potential. So I'm not going to say that solar panels isn't a good idea. I would say that it would be better if the government were to, on an industrial level, on a national level, implement solar and allow for people, private homes and businesses to implement solar for because it's on the house roof, so you're not really taking up any spaces.
Mm-hmm.
any space. Sorry, and so in on an industrial level, solar panels is not the best fit, but on an individual level, it's the best fit.
But your idea for the Wadadley Industrial Renewable Energy is basically to supply to the entire country.
Right, correct.
So the plant will be. Will it be a plant independent of APUA, or will this be locked into what the APUA offers to the general populace?
It would basically both. It would be a plant that is independent. W.I.R.E would provide the energy from the offshore wind farm, feeding it into APUA's grid, and then APUA distributes it throughout the island,
so that the people will benefit, and
right.
businesses will benefit.
Right.
Now, what's the difference with what you're saying in that question that just came up to what the installation of the solar plant just below the airport here?
Right. It's the same situation. It's taking up it's providing energy, which is good. And let me just state that clear. It might seem like I have something against solar panels, but I really don't. In fact, my company, W.I.R.E Limited on the side, we sell solar panels, so I have nothing against solar panels. We also sell wind turbines, but on an industrial level, because we have to separate the two. On a private homeowner-based situation,
domestic and industrial is you're saying domestically it's good for your home. And
right.
on an industrial level, if you want to bring in the big companies for manufacturers, you need a way to let energy be less for them.
Yeah.
The cost of energy to be less for them
and more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if this was Saudi Arabia, to paint the picture even better, it would be solar panels would be a good idea because you have the vast amount of
land space,
right? Just the open desert. So when you look, you just see nothing but dust and dirt. So it would be good to have a solar panel system there. But for Antigua in particular, given that we're only 108 square miles, we want to again make sure that efficiency plays a part in the policies that we will be implementing, and by we I mean the government. And so once the supply is high and the demand is low, the cost will come down. Companies would be willing to set up businesses here that would tackle not only the high cost of energy, but it would also job creations. Because right now the cost of energy is $1.20 per kilowatt an hour here in Antigua and Barbuda. If we can get it down to 12 cents, 6 cents, and even 3 cents per kilowatt an hour.
The cost is what now?
$1.20 per kilowatt an hour.
And you're saying it's going to take us a span over 10 years to do that?
Correct. It can be done.
In over a 10-year period?
It can be, yes. It can be done.
Because to leap from 1 something to 3 cents, 6 cents, and 12 cents.
Right. It's not overnight. And I'm so glad you harped on that because that's another facet to the proposal. It won't necessarily be installed overnight, the 20 megawatts. It would be progressive, and we'll work in 2 steps with APUA. And so W.I.R.E and APUA will be working together. The more we can lower our price for APUA, the intention would be for APUA to lower its cost
to the consumers.
And so now instead of spending $500 a month for energy, you'd only be spending $100 a month and even lower. And you might say, well, $400 for a family of 4 is not a lot, but it actually goes a long way because when you can now take that $400 and spend in other areas, again, it multiplies a lot. It goes a long way. I feel...
but before you go, the same cost benefit that a household would get as reflect on a business, they would be paying just about the same price you're paying per kilowatt.
I know the businesses get charged a different rate. I'm not quite sure, but the principle would be the same. Instead of paying whatever they're paying now,
it will be less.
It will be less. And then especially when you have a company like Apple or General Motors coming here wanting to set up businesses here, you can of course within the contract give them an even more favorable deal because you know that it's creating jobs. It's developing. I mean, how cool would it be to say that the iPhone, the next, I don't know where it's at. I'm more of an Android, but how cool would it be to say that the next iPhone 9 or iPhone 8
manufactured in Antigua.
manufactured right here in Antigua and Barbuda.
But we look at it 10 years down the line now. You're gonna be almost 40 then.
Within 10 years. You can say so. You can say so. Now, let me explain a little, touch on the APC situation, because I feel it necessary to repeat and to re-emphasize the situation. Now, in 2006, the APC entered into a contract with the government and for in a joint venture agreement, and the deal went sour to say the least. And the APC sued the government in 2008. The court case ended in 2013 with APC coming out on top. And as a result of the court case, APC is owed $300 million by the government. Right now, the sad thing is APC's contract expires in 2018. Come 2018 and they're not paid their $300 million in full, they have all right legally to decommission the power plants and ship them overseas to whichever country they so choose. That basically leaves Antigua in a state of blackout, and I see the lights going out as well.
So the lights going out is the indicator us to take a commercial break.
Right.
Want to front
Of the time of this world when renewable energy seems to be so important, and the world meets in Paris and they discuss the climate change and how important it is for us to stop using fossil fuel and get to renewable energy. Codrington is one of the members of the Wadadley Industrial Renewable Energy Limited, and the little bits that we can do in Antigua and Barbuda can go a long way for our country and for the OECS. So we entertain him again as we continue this discussion on why it is so important for us to start look at renewable energy.
Right. Now, before we went to break, I was discussing about the APC situation. So we owe them $300 million, right? The contract expires in 2018, and if they so choose to pack up and leave, they can do so. But let me state as well, because it might give the impression that I'm against APC, and I'm not. I actually got a chance to sit down with the owners, and I have to say they're very commendable and respectable individuals. And I'll even go as far as to say, if young Antiguans and Barbudans, particularly the young men, were to emulate the Hadids and have a more business mindset, Antigua and Barbuda would be in a much more prosperous state, because these individuals, the Hadids, they are actually respectable individuals. It's just the fact that the line of business that they're in, it gives them the perception of the Grinch who stole Christmas, but they're just businessmen doing what businessmen do. And
the opportunity is there for them, and they're capitalizing on it here in Antigua and Barbuda.
Exactly. And so, as a result now, I am actually, with the whole APC situation, I am in favor of them the government renewing the contract with APC. But what I'm here for is to let the government know that they first are to but to sign a renewable energy contract first before extending or renewing the contract with APC, and that's very important.
So, but let me ask you a question. In your conversation with the Hadids, is there anywhere in the footprint that they have renewable energy in their mindset?
I can't say. I think they might have peeped it and think it would be great.
But the reason why I posed that question to you, because of the fact that they, the cash flow for them seems to be bountiful.
Right.
Wouldn't there be good partners in a renewable energy business?
Well, I'm glad you said it and not me. You said it and not me. And so
no, but this is not perception. This is factual. If you're looking at the future and what's going to be best, because instead of they packing up and leaving Antigua and Barbuda, here's a business entity that they can partner with. And it's a win-win situation for all of us in Antigua and Barbuda.
You are absolutely right. And I laughed, but I am very serious when I said I'm glad you said it and not me. But, that's left up to the negotiations and, whatever goes on behind closed doors. But, again, I'm just glad that you said it. Finally, though, well, not finally, but moving forward, I just want to. I keep saying I just want to again reemphasize that it's important for the government to
Before
have
2018, before you do a renewal with a contract,
right.
it is best to sign. And this is the reason why I posed a question to you about partnering and the cost of the Wadadli Industrial Renewable Energy Limited. You would not be refusing partners with cash flow.
No, of course not. They will
Okay.
actually.
So let me finish this. Now, instead of the cost of packing up, it's ACP?
APC.
APC.
Right.
And packing it up and shipping it someplace else. Although renewable energy would be set up in Antigua and Barbuda, it's going to take some time before that can get into the grid.
Yes, you're correct.
So we just don't say we are getting rid of fossil fuel energy.
Exactly.
And here comes renewable energy.
Exactly.
Well, what I need to know, what's the time frame for setting up something like this on the seabed before we start getting return of electricity in Antigua and Barbuda? And that can then shape the conversation from APC. It's APC?
Right.
Let me write it down. So I don't, APC.
Right.
Yeah. Because when we look at 2018, the possibilities of them shipping things out, it's crazy.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's going to need a transition period
Right.
between fossil fuel and renewable energy.
Right.
So what's the time frame? Let's say everything goes well, on top of the board, we start construction of this.
Right. That is, first of all, let me commend you because that is a great question. The time frame is 1 to 3 years. If everything goes well, as expected, it would be within 1 year's time. If there's obstacles every step of the way, then maximum we're looking at 3 years.
Well, what sort of obstacles would you foresee? Because say an obstacle, we're going out to lay it on the seabed. What sort of obstacles? Is it financial?
No, not necessarily. Not finances, and that's the most amazing thing about it. This has nothing to do with finance. This is all a matter of well, I'd rather not say it on here because that's what I realize when you
sometimes
when you
some
speak
things
it, right.
Yeah, okay, I understand
becomes
that.
a reality.
But let's just put it this way. What I'm saying is, when you look at obstacles, what obstacles were you referring to before you start at the end of the month? We're just using time frames.
Right.
The end of the month before we get something in the grid.
Well, that again, making it a reality. But what I will say is that there will be an opportunity for Antiguan and Barbudan investors to invest.
No, but before we get into the investment, what I asked you, okay, so we have fossil fuel now.
Right.
And we're saying there's a
slowly
the transition.
Right.
So I'm asking now, with Wadadli Industrial Renewable Energy Limited, if they were given the opportunity
what obstacles
at the end of the month, and you said, okay, depending on the obstacles, if all goes well,
right,
in 1 year's time, obstacles meaning what? What do you foresee?
Well, no, and it's not that I'm dodging the question. I'm not, but I'm just of the philosophy that. Well, let me put it this way. In Saudi Arabia, for example, and in the Middle East, you don't, regardless of what something looks like or is going to be, in terms of being negative, you just don't say it at all because speaking it actually gives force to it. Well, in terms of the obstacles, there are countless obstacles. It's just when you give attention to it. So if they do come up, then so be it.
But what I wanted to know, is it in a construction phase? Is it that you're going to meet something that is
okay?
That's what I'm looking at. Not an obstacle in anything. Let's say that you start the gig and you're out in the seabeds. What sort of obstacles can you meet when you're out there?
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's not more so an obstacle. It's just unforeseen circumstances. Let me use that word.
You see, because you mentioned the sea, and obviously because of the terrain of the land that you think we don't have enough, but you said the sea. But how far out?
Not more than 5 to 10 miles. And I should have used that word in the beginning. Not obstacles, but just doing business in general, in whatever business it is.
Because sometimes it can go right, and sometimes the unforeseen circumstances can come up that mitigate the time.
Exactly.
So let's say that all works well.
Right.
Forget that everything is going fine.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, okay, renewable energy, you guys start working tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
How soon can we get? Remember, I'm looking at 2018.
Right.
And you're saying before government would resign a contract,
right,
they need to get into renewable energy.
Correct.
Now, I think they're doing that just down the road with the solar panels for the airport.
Right.
So that's why I'm asking, what's the time frame?
Within 1 to 3 years. Now, the investors, and this will play a part in terms of the time frame. There will be a time frame after the contract has been signed. From the government to W.I.R.E in terms of getting Antiguan investors involved in the project. And so Antiguan investors who would like to invest, they can contact me and,
But you've had dialogue with the Hadids.
Correct, I did.
Okay.
Well, no, in terms of just simply letting them know what my intentions are and that, I'm not here to cause any contention or cut them out of the picture. So it wasn't in terms of any finances.
It sounds like it'd be a viable deal if, since they're into power and energy,
right.
Would be a nice partnership.
Right. Some people don't like to mix the two. Some do, but it's
but aren't we looking at the future? If we're looking at what the world is saying as far as climate change is concerned, it's something that we must do now.
Right.
If it was not so, the government would not be down there putting up that solar energy plant for the airport.
Right. Exactly. And the amazing thing is, and this is just another aspect to the conversation, with the solar panels, from what I understand, they're still growing, they're still installing more. The situation is a bit unclear as to whether or not it is involved in it has started supplying the airport with energy. But from what I understand, the airport now is not operating 100%. So, for example...
That's because of the energy?
Right.
The power that it needs?
Exactly. The elevators are not working. From sources that work in the airport have told me the elevators are not working because it consumes...
Maybe some of the elevators?
Well, all from what I gather. And that is because elevators draw a lot of energy. It consumes a lot of energy. Now, if we were in a laissez-faire society where, people just do as they want, and the government does as it wants, and it allows for the airport to be operating at 100%, in terms of energy consumption, that would actually cause an overload on the grid and would cause a blackout within the area. And this is just within. This would feed a grid substation area of Antigua and Barbuda. Now imagine.
So you were saying if everything of the airport
right
was powered up,
correct,
from APUA,
correct,
it would create a problem where we'd have certain blackouts in Antigua and Barbuda.
Exactly, because it's not enough energy. And if this were to happen, this were to be the case all over Antigua, where homes and businesses were allowed to operate fully without any restrictions, that would actually cause a blackout for the entire nation because there's simply not enough energy, and that is why.
So we need more.
We need more energy.
So it's not something that you're saying to get rid of, but we need more. Because when I've listened to many programs, you'd hear how important it is for you. We can't get away from fossil fuel completely.
Right, and the goal isn't to get away from it completely. It's just simply
to reduce.
Exactly. To reduce the amount that we consume. Because I actually have here the Petro-Carib agreement. Well, just a summary. This article.
Yeah, you have prepared I was going to ask you for that agreement, but since it's just a summary that you have.
Well, Observer has it published in an article titled "Chavez's Oil and Antigua and Barbuda's Debt." This was dated March 13, 2013. And it reads, the Petro-Carib agreement to which Antigua and Barbuda signed simply allows for the purchase of oil at market value with 5% to 50% upfront. Countries would then be allowed a 2-year grace period with a payment plan through 17 to 25 years with 1% to 2% interest if oil prices were above US $40 per barrel. Essentially, we are putting the oil and gas on our Venezuelan credit card and leaving the debt for our children to pay off, unquote. Now, in layman's term, we are not getting any discount on the oil. We're paying for it full price. The only thing is
we get a longer time period to pay for it.
Precisely. And whatever, if it costs $100, then we only get to pay $5 to $50, whichever we so choose, upfront for it. And then throughout the coming years, we pay off. We have 17 to 25 years to pay off for the remaining debts. Now, it goes back to what I said earlier. When that date begins to kick in and we're not able to give payback Venezuela, they will come asking for their pound of flesh. We will have to provide shares in our power plant to Venezuela. We will have to give them.
Doesn't Venezuela have shares now in the West Indies Oil Company?
They do. They do. And it's not stated, but I want to believe that 50%. What I think it was stated 24% to Venezuela and 20
to another the Chinese.
Correct.
So we own 51%.
Correct. So it was stated. I was thinking about the Woodadley power plant because the Woodadley power plant, the shares went to West Indies Oil. Right.
So it means now that they all combine to whatever the Chinese and the Venezuelans would have.
Exactly.
Because we still own 51%.
Exactly. So it's not stated exactly how much Venezuela owns in Woodadley power plant per se, but it is stated specifically how much Venezuela would get from the West Indies Oil Company. Now, when I walk the streets of St. John's and Seaview Farm, people come to me and we talk about renewable energy, and one of the common question is, do you think you will be successful? And I have to say, this was never about me. It has never been. This is about truly the people of Antigua and Barbuda living a more successful and glorious life, a life that they deserve. And so now, if you were to ask me, do I think the people of Antigua and Barbuda will be successful? The answer for me is a resounding and an unequivocal yes. So this is, and I always say, if Antiguans only knew what they deserve, there would be riots in the streets. And this isn't necessarily to put pressure on, this isn't about politics, whether it's ALP or UPP, regardless of what.
It's reality.
It's reality. It's reality. And so I have to say, we deserve more, we deserve better. And the more I read the story about Moses, Dave, and you may laugh, but I feel
Why would
convicted. I should say my interpretation of it. But before I go on, let me say I won't necessarily say I'm a Christian by conventional standards, but I have a great amount of good in my heart, right? But the more I read the account of Moses in the Bible, my interpretation of it is Moses at the time, you have to understand that that Egypt was a superpower. Just like you have America, Russia, and China, Egypt at that time was a superpower, and their economy was structured it was prospering based off the free labor
from the slaves
of the slaves, the Hebrew Israelites. Now, when Moses went to Pharaoh and said, thus saith the Lord, let my people go, what he was in essence telling Pharaoh is that he ought to restructure Egypt's economy. He doesn't care what Egypt restructure its economy to. He doesn't care how he does it, but it won't be off the backs of the Hebrew Israelites anymore. Correct. And so now it's you would say it's comical, it's ludicrous. You would call me crazy if I were to get a meeting with the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda and I were to tell him, don't accept any more tourists from America or Canada or the UK. Like, who's this guy? Doesn't he know that's where we get our bread and butter? You know, and is this? I believe the first knock knock joke was from Moses. Knock knock. Who's there? Moses. What do you want? Tell Pharaoh to let
My
the
people
Hebrew
go.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so I feel convicted in what I'm doing. And not saying that I'm Moses, but I do believe that the people involved in W.I.R.E Limited, the management team, we have the bright. I'm fortunate and I'm blessed to say I have the brightest minds in W.I.R.E Limit in Antigua and Barbuda working with W.I.R.E, and so I'm confident that with persistence and with the support of the management team, we will be successful. It's just a matter of being persistent, because the movement, that the exodus rather, that's happening here in Antigua, it's not from one landmass to another landmass, but rather a movement from one state of consciousness to another state of consciousness. And those individuals, the powers that be, along with their minions, who would choose to remain with the status quo, will be drowned in their own ignorance one way or the other. And so I'm convicted with what I'm doing. I also want to let the youths of Antigua and Barbuda know that in whatever it is they're pursuing, their goals, don't be afraid to, don't take no for an answer. Keep persisting. And I'll give you a practical example. When I first came back from the university to open up a business account for W.I.R.E Limited, I went to a particular bank and they told me that I required like three different documents, and I had forgot one in the States. And she said, yeah, I'm going to need that document. So I said, can I use this? What about this document instead? She said, no. I said, what about this document instead? She said, no, there's no way around it. You have to have that document. I said, okay. I got up, left, walked across the street, went to another bank where I had a account when I was younger. Told her that I'd like to open up a business account. Can I do it with these documents here? She said, yes. I said, perfect. I got up, left, went back to the bank that I came from, and I said, look, I really acknowledge and like the business, the model, the image of the bank, right? And I really want to do business here. Now, if you insist that I have to have this document and I can't open up an account, that's fine. I'll simply go across to the bank where I just came from, and they said I can open up an account there. And so I will, if you insist, then I'll just simply go across to the other bank and open the account. And so she got up. She said, okay. She got up, went to speak with the supervisor, and in about 3 minutes she came back and she said, okay,
yes,
Mr. Codrington, you can't open up an account here. And so the point that I want, and this is not about me, this is not to glorify me, this is just simply about the
persistent,
the young adults
if
to
you
know,
believe in something,
keep going at it. And I mean, I could call names, Lenisa George, Amaya Attil, Carlin Knight, John White, Kyle Christian. These are just individuals that I know have been persistent, have already done tremendous work in Antigua and Barbuda. And so it's not just me alone that's rising up. There are other young Antiguans and Barbudans that are rising up and are pursuing their goals. They're not taking no for an answer and getting the job done.
Well, you know me, because I think it is so important, and you have some of the tools that I need for the listeners. I'm going to invite you back, and we'll talk, and I'll have you back here at another time. And I do hope by the next time you come back, I'll have some good news from you, that of course they're willing to sit at the table and listen. Or the good old folks down at the decide, this is a good venture, let's merge with this young man.
Right,
Thanks for being with me. All the best. If I don't see you before Christmas, have yourself a joyous Christmas and stay safe. I wish you the best of everything, and continue being persistent, young man.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
That's going to do it for Observer PM for today, Tuesday. Stay tuned for Evolution Drive Time.
This is Observer Radio, 91.1 FM.